Cassandra Nova, an X-Men villain who emerged during Grant Morrison's run on New X-Men. This was during the early 2000s, 2001 to be exact was her first appearance. And as of 2024, the villain has seemingly exploded in the realm of adaptation. Or rather, not exploded, but thrust into the public consciousness. First through an adaptation of plot elements from the first storyline in which she debuted, that being E is for Extinction, elements of which made an appearance in X-Men 97. While the trailer for Deadpool 3, aka Deadpool vs. Wolverine, aka finally seeing Wolverine in his comic-accurate costume after decades, features scenes with Cassandra Nova as the villain. Or at least one of them. There are a lot of references in that trailer. I see you, giant man's corpse. But all of this has prompted the question for some, just who is Cassandra Nova? Interestingly enough, this character underwent a few shifts in origin when she first debuted. And when it comes to Cassandra Nova, there must also be attached another question. What is Cassandra Nova? Since she's making the rounds, I thought it'd be fun to cast back to her origins, and then also chart a little bit past as to what she's been doing, but mostly the origins. It's also always fun to go back to New X-Men, a run that tends to be remembered sometimes in broad strokes, and some of the specifics get lost. But when you get down into the weeds, you can see why it produced some polarizing reactions. I don't think I'll be needing you anymore. Goodbye, Lalandra. You were hopeless in bed. Goodbye. I want to die now. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and let's take a look back at Cassandra Nova. Cassandra Nova debuted in the first issue of Grant Morrison's run on the X-Men, which was X-Men 114, or New X-Men 114. This was of the run that began in 1991. However, for Morrison's era, the book was renamed The New X-Men, and so that's why that run begins at 114, which was a classic practice. Not so much in that era, but it was tried and true in ages past to just restart with the classic numbering but have a new title. Cassandra Nova was created by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, and featured in the first storyline E is for Extinction. We did a video breaking down that story and its history and how it was linked to the X-Men film from the year 2000, and a desire to appeal to a more mainstream audience and shake things up. There was a whole manifesto included in the Omni. We read some of it. There are a lot of interesting quotes. The oh my gosh, the glare. Oh. The manifesto is part of what makes picking this up worthwhile. I couldn't do that to you. Is this better? That's a bit better. The front is just reflecting. Now, if you missed all of that, I'll have a link down below. For this one, we'll be more focused on Cassandra herself. When we first see her, she is showing Bolivar Trask's nephew, Neanderthals, being slaughtered by Homo sapiens in the competition for species dominance. While he protests that he doesn't think it actually happened that way, she says, yes, it did. Source, trust me, bro. Also, it's relevant thematically, and so that's why it's there. It's gonna be very important for her first origin. Right off the bat, it's clear that Nova hates mutants and views them as a threat, saying that the human race will be extinct within 4 generations as mutants are the superior species. She is also shown to have powerful psychic abilities, and that will then extend to having even more abilities. She's able to launch a telepathic attack against Charles from Ecuador, and it very nearly crushes his mind. In this issue, she's located a forgotten master mold that requires the DNA of a Trask to be commanded, so that's why she's brought his relative to the middle of the jungle. This master mold had AI, and so it was able to repurpose some of the materials around it to create a new type of sentinel, wild sentinels. From the start, Cassandra is cold, cruel, but also takes a kind of joy in it. There's a delight in her actions. She's reveling. Go on, meet humankind's last hope against the mutant menace. Talk to them, Mr. Trask, or they'll chop you up and grind you into neatly filed segments.
Oh, don't hurt me! In the name of God, stop them!
That must be your famous charm and captivating wit running down to your shoes, hmm? Don't be scared. These deformed homemade horrors were manufactured in a master mold designed by dear old Uncle Bolly. We get a reveal in this issue that Cassandra is bald and bears a striking resemblance to Charles Xavier, which will end up mattering a lot. For the time being in this first arc, it remained a mystery. The next issue, 115, saw her powers expand. She was able to copy Trask's genetic sequence just by spending a decent amount of time with him, and at that point she didn't need him anymore. So she killed him, and she did this by phasing through his body in a series of gruesome panels, all the while mocking him. These panels are great. They stick with you. I don't hate you, Donald Trask III. Does the gourmet hate the steak? But it's taken me 10 hours to read and copy the 3 billion base letters in your DNA sequence, and I'm done with you now. By this point, she had launched the Wild Sentinels on mutant hubs, and this included Genosha. So it was her and her Wild Sentinels responsible for that massacre. She was captured by Cyclops and Wolverine, the latter of whom sliced her vocal cords so that she couldn't manipulate the Sentinels. But she seemed very happy about this. Cassandra Nova is quickly established as a character with plans on top of plans on top of plans. She wanted to get captured. Everything is always according to plan. She did it 35 minutes ago. She's one of those types of characters. Machiavellian machinations, that kind of thing. Now, 116 sees the first explanation for what she might be, because the X-Men are baffled by her. Her cell structure is odd. She's like nothing they've ever seen before. She also in this is shown to have rapid healing abilities. This issue is going to introduce the idea that Cassandra Nova is some kind of evolutionary jump, that she is a new kind of species, and that she's identified mutants as a threat, that she is correct and they are replacing humans, and that she may be something set to replace them. Because every few 100,000 years, evolution, which emphatically does not proceed smoothly, takes huge catastrophic jumps. Old life forms get wiped from the fossil record overnight in periodic mass extinctions and are replaced. I think Cassandra Nova is the first of a new, unforeseen species. I think she'll instinctively use her outlandish natural gifts to wipe us out if she can. This could become a war for the domination of the biosphere. Now this idea, while interesting, as mentioned in the E for Extinction video, also undermines what has over decades come to be the X-Men's core area of allegorical and allusional play, which is mutants as expressions of otherness and some form of minority status. This explanation places them in a slightly different realm, which given their more usual status, made some feel this part of the story was dabbling in replacement theory. It appears to have been going more for the war of the species. They're actual different species going at it. This is part of the shaking things up. But it's also not hard to see how the former could be inferred, and in terms of long-term storytelling, it's potentially not the best idea for the X-Men. But this did not end up being a long-term story. Ideas like this are what lead to things like no more mutants. Meaning this, I think I found a genetic trigger for extinction buried deep in the human genome. This E gene turns on when an entire species is about to be turned off by Mother Nature. The data looks conclusive. Yes, science the science. Tech that tech. This science is questionable. This is some Silver Age science. But don't worry, if you were worried, this idea is gonna be dropped hard. What will remain is the idea that Cassandra Nova is some form of near unstoppable evil. A malevolent force, almost in some way of nature. She escapes and demonstrates a truly terrifying amount of power. The X-Men really aren't a match. She's trying to get towards Cerebra, not Cerebro, Cerebra. This so that she can eliminate mutants from inside of it, because then she'll seek them out with telepathy and blah. But she's taken out via a neck snap. Sorry, we need a stronger neck snap. Only, surprise, no she wasn't. They reveal that later. She was so powerful it would have been a bit anticlimactic. No. Here's what actually happened. She transferred her consciousness into Charles's body and his into hers. This as she was shot. She then proceeded to undermine the X-Men from the inside, from multiple fronts as well. First by announcing Charles as a mutant to the world, and then by leaving with the Shi'ar to corrupt and influence Lilandra, who is their empress and Charles's lover, so that she could then turn around and use the Empire to come back and destroy mutants. There were of course some more steps in between. Clip notes. The reveal that Cassandra Nova is inhabiting Charles is given to the reader in issue 117. The X-Men learn that Charles is trapped in Nova's body from Beast in issue 120, and it's in issue 121 where our explanation for her starts to shift. The artist for this run cycled, but quietly was a staple and is back for this issue, which is largely told with no dialogue. It's very sparing. It's the journey of Emma and Jean into Charles's mind in Nova's body to try to discern what is going on. This is a very well done issue and it stands out in this run. It's a masterclass in visual storytelling. Even though some can find Quietly's style visually off-putting, it is very well constructed. It does also have some cheeky elements that are just there to be there, such as the cheesecake surrounding Emma where her clothes get blasted off at one point. In general, Emma has the worst time of this issue, just gunked and pawed at. They're playing a lot with the rivalry between her and Jean. On the whole though, this is just a very solid issue. There's some very striking and unsettling imagery, and it's through this that the reader is shown a new origin for Cassandra as Charles's twin sister whom he tried to kill in the womb. Jean swimming in the sperm haunts me. The panels of baby Charles punching baby Cassandra in the face are well done. Something about the way the eyes are drawn, it just connotes this menace. Most notably for this, we see that Charles is blasted back by her, already showing she's incredibly powerful, but the process makes their mother fall down the stairs, which will lead to her being a stillborn. Professor X tried to kill his twin sister while they were both still in the womb. We ought to talk. Issue 122 is going to solidify all this. While Cassandra Nova is manipulating the Shi'ar fleet, sending them towards Earth, and manifesting this terrifying psychic shield with all these grasping arms, we learn more about her origin. She's Charles's twin sister, kinda. So how come we never heard about any twins before? Because the professor didn't even know he had a sister. The last time they met was in the womb. I'll show you. She was born without a body of her own. I know that much. She had to improvise using Charles's cells. Yeah, that sperm you saw going in there last story, forget about it. This is the explanation now. There was no body. Shh. She appears educated and intelligent, but I think she's only mimicking human traits. She's living emotional energy, formless, immense, and totally unique. In Cassandra's mind, our universe and the womb she became aware in are one and the same thing. Only she and Charles are real. We have no idea how she survived their first battle, but her motivations are basic. She has to kill Charles for mastery of the universe as she sees it. So as one can see, the unique, she's something different aspect has been kept. But the motive and the what have been changed. All that mutant human extinction, we're gonna retract that away from her. She's some kind of emotional, evil, malevolent force, and she's solely focused on Charles, and that's why she's trying to wipe out mutants. Not because there's an EG and that's set to kill us all. And there had always from the start been lines that indicated some kind of deeper connection with Charles. Granted, all of this is still interesting, but it's a mighty pivot. But there's so much else going on in this plot that it can be easy to move with it and ignore/forget what it was initially attached to. Cassandra is much scarier and smarter than we thought. She plans in advance and she thinks of everything. So by this point, Cassandra is a menace, hanging over them. We're just building her up and up and up. But the changes, they're still coming. We're not entirely done. Because like her first explanation back in 116, this leaves room for some potentially lore-harming explanations. As it stands in this issue, Charles just tried to kill her. Now you can infer that there are some reasons why, but this also leaves Charles in a place as potentially being the cause of why she's evil. And while Charles in this period is no longer quite as much the paragon as he evolved into being over the decades, or at least that was the overall perception of him that formed over time, there's still the potential that this isn't the best look for the leader of the X-Men, you know, trying to commit infanticide from the womb. So we're gonna modify that. But for now, the X-Men have been infected. They're sick. They've got some kind of flu-like thing. And you're not ready for the explanation. Nano-sentinels. Oh, I did like the aliens hand gesture. Aliens. No, nanites. Nova infected them when they first captured her. With characters like that, it means that you can pretty much write in anything and it could have happened off panel. But they had plans, so it's justified. In all fairness for this one, they do lay a couple of seeds, and where they slot it, it's a good spot. It's conceivable based on the wild sentinels and what was going on.
She dosed us with tiny sentinel machines developed in the Ecuador master mold. Don't worry, I'll think of something. I'll try to think of something. Miniaturized sentinels, Logan. Bacterial robots hiding in the blood Cassandra showered us with. They're eating us away.
Grant Morrison and cannibalism and things or people eating you. It's a thing. But you see, this works. Back in issue 116, when she was shot and the blood was all blue and it showered them, this gives an explanation for why it's blue outside of artistic license. It's more than just because it looked cool. Now, through all of this, Nova has been manipulating the Shi'ar, steering them towards Earth. It's all very convoluted, as the best supervillain plans are. In 125, Scott again confirms Nova as some kind of emotional energy being. You're a bodiless life form, pure emotional energy, which needs the professor's nervous system to work through. This is part of establishing why she's able to assert control on top of her psychic abilities. She's able to pull out people's negative traits or memories and twist them. So some of the people around her just literally fall down, trapped inside their own insecurities. But it's not till Jean stores Charles inside of her own mind that we get a bit more of an explanation. She stores Charles's mind inside of her mind. The explanation we're going to settle on is in 126. Cassandra is going to be something ancient. Not an evolutionary response, but some kind of shadow self. And something the Shi'ar have a name for, which is great because they're right here. Cassandra is what Shi'ar legends call Mumudrai, Henry. Charles is trying to explain this thing. Think of it like out is the Mumudrai of in, yin is the Mumudrai of yang, and Cassandra Nova is the Mumudrai of Charles Xavier. Legend says each of us faces our own personal Mumudrai in the womb, shortly before birth. It is our first experience of the alien, the other, the different. Imagine a bodiless, parasite species, born without true flesh, without real substance. Long live the new flesh? I can't hear the words true flesh without thinking about Videodrome. Only to be entangled with the developing body and mind of the world's greatest telepath. So we're still in other species territory, but we've tweaked it. It's now no longer tied to human Homo sapien versus Homo superior. It's now some kind of parasitic alien. Also, you're still in the position of making the other villainous, if that was what was trying to be moved away from. I'm not sure if it was specifically, though. The way this is focused, though, it justifies Charles's in-womb actions, because he's shown a bit later on this issue to be disturbed that his first conscious act was to try to murder another living being. But now this is framing it as it's okay, because that's everyone's first battle, and it's against something evil. This is most likely, like the first explanation, not meant to be delved too much into. Although they would be expanded later on and given another name as well, Revenants. If you read the pitch, there's not too much about we're going to explore any kind of deep psychological themes. It's much more, we're gonna bring this to the mainstream. Instead, this explanation as it stands situates Charles as still in the morally right, and also explains why Cassandra Nova is so over-the-top evil. Now, this often gets simplified down into Cassandra Nova is a dark Charles, or Charles's evil twin, which may be another reason for it, as it parses down nicely. But there is a bit more to it than that. And it does feel like it was developed a bit as the story went on. If you read through in the back of the manifesto, they also give you the 6-month draft pitch, an overview of the arcs and the issues. Cassandra Nova is called Charlie X in those. And it's interesting to read because there are things that are different, like Moira was supposed to be there, Storm was supposed to be there, Nova was old and she restored her youth at one point. They're in Nicaragua instead of Ecuador. Lots of little shifts. So that's just to say that things definitely moved and evolved as the story was being created, as they do. But with Nova, it feels like there were some more changes than others. Also, let me know if you ever want to compare and contrast that, because it's interesting. But this last explanation, it's the one that sticks. This is the full final reveal. When we see Cassandra again, it's not going to be so that we can tweak her origin that much. There's one point where they kind of changed the motivation a little bit, but the base bones were sticking with this. The womb, the Mumadrai. The Mumadrai copied Charles's cells to build its body. It accessed the full spectrum of latent mutant functions in his genome. And I felt her crawling monstrous thoughts. I sensed a raging hunger, vast enough to consume me and the whole world. I lashed out in our mother's womb. My very first act as a conscious being. How this all shakes up for Cassandra is not great. Charles gets his own body back, and Cassandra is forced into this protoplasm body stuff. This by Emma, it's a trap conceived for her. This character was introduced earlier on, so a lot of things that are utilized are seeded. This is conceived by Emma, and then Nova is just trapped there in this kind of quasi-lobotomized, being re-educated by versions of Charles and Jean's state. It's quite horrific, but Emma is there to do villainous things under the guise of good. She can get away with different things because she's Emma Frost. But what happened with Cassandra Nova? So let's cliff notes this, but as of 2001, Cassandra Nova hasn't been utilized too much. If you look at the Marvel fandom for amount of appearances, it says 37. Take that with a tiny bit of a grain of salt, but just know that what it means is that there have been very few since her inception. Usually those are pretty good about tracking appearances though. Depending on the character, people tend to be pretty on it. And then there are some characters who just don't even have one. Now, of course, Cassandra was not done. She was brought back at first in a purely psychic capacity. It seemed like she had a body, but it was a manifestation that had been projected by Emma. And their connection and history were greatly expanded to the point where Cassandra had engineered her secondary mutation. First, she was influencing those minds trying to escape into Hisako or Armor's body, and then it wasn't quite clear if she had or if she hadn't. She was shelved again for a bit, even though it was said that she had escaped at some point and that she was body hopping. But then when she reappears in X-Men Red in 2018 is where things get interesting, because she has a body. If you know, let me know, because I want a bit of a hunt for when did Cassandra specifically get her body back, but the point is she has one. She's updated her nano-sentinels into Sentinites with the help of Fords, who she's influencing. She's once again trying to stoke mutant hate. These Sentinites can get into people's heads, and they cause mutants to act out murderously, which of course decreases their rep. This later arc, which is known to some as the Mutant Extinction Agenda, would also refine her hatred of mutants to because her brother tried to kill her in the womb, which kind of undermines the shadow self thing a little bit and pushes us back into it's Charles's fault, which I'm not sure if that was the intent of it or not, or if it was just a retelling that took that as the motivation, because some of X-Men Red feels a little loose with the details on Cassandra. I'm so curious about the body. Please let me know, because the way it looked to me, it was as if they kind of forgot, or if nobody gave Tom Taylor the memo, or if they just decided that it could be inferred that she built it again. She built one body, she can build another. We can rebuild her. We have the technology. At the end of this, they were able to leave a nanite inside of her brain, so she is physically there. This isn't some astral thing, and it forced her to feel empathy. And so in that way, she was neutralized. And then as of the Krakoa era, she appeared in the Marauders book, because whether you were a villain, active, brainwashed, what have you, you ended up there. Although in all fairness to Marauders, this was one of the books that acknowledged acknowledge that there would be tensions there. People aren't just okay with Cassandra Nova. And they actually ended up leaving her stranded in the past right before an Extinction level event, which, you know what, given how she was introduced, was quite poetic. And essentially, time of recording, that's Cassandra Nova. Will she return? Has she returned? Probably. Were you familiar with this character? If you are, do you like her? What do you think of her evolving motivations and origins? Do you like the one she ended up with, or did you prefer one of the earlier ones? Do you think she's a good recurring villain for the X-Men, or a kind of one and done? Let me know all your thoughts down below. While you're down there, please do all the YouTube things: like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.